Hi, I am so excited to share about, why do we hear about some people spontaneously healing? Why do other people take some time? Then, of course, a lot of people have questions why some people never heal at all. So, I am really excited to deep dive and explore these different scenarios. In near death experiences, some people come back spontaneously healed. And an example would be probably Anita Moorjani is probably the best one I could think of off the top of my head. She had stage 4 cancer, was dying of cancer, and had her near death experience. When she came back, no signs of cancer. So that is a pretty dramatic, spontaneous remission or healing. Wouldn't really call it remission because I believe she was never afflicted with cancer again. Don't quote me on that. I'm just pretty sure. Another one is Evan Alexander. Had a really bad infection and was not supposed to live, and just crazy stories. His near-death experience also, helped him heal. But what about these people who don't? They're not on the brink of death, but they still have these amazing spontaneous healings. If any of you know my story, I went to a meditation retreat and was able to turn off my deep brain stimulator that I bought, 12, 10 years. I had the condition for 20 some, and then knew about the surgery when I was 18, wasn't able to get it until 29. So fought for it for quite a long time. So I'd say mine would kind of be considered spontaneous as well. And then you hear of other people that have long-term healing. So an example is someone I've spoken with, shared his story with me. And he was diagnosed with MS and had the brain scans and the scarring and everything to prove it. I mean, his brain was pretty scarred up from the multiple sclerosis. And he, over time, was able to heal. And those brain scans then showed no scarring. He had no symptoms. And, I would consider that a slower progression of healing. So what is the difference? Why are there all these differences? And then why do some people never heal at all? So really want to dive in first off with people, the examples I bring up are either people I have studied, I have worked with, or who have shared their stories with me. So, either there are just people I've heard of their stories, people who have actually shared their stories with me, or people I've coached and clients I've worked with. So, this is accumulation of all of that. So there are a few commonalities that happen with people who have healing, and even spontaneous healing. First, they believed that healing was possible to an extent. So even if you don't think that you can be healed all the way, you can completely cure yourself, but you believe that healing is possible to a degree. Say you believe that, with certain changes and certain implementations that, yeah, I believe I could heal at least 50%, feel 50% better. What does that mean? Well, that means I have more energy. That means I feel better. I have more time. I maybe even, once I get to 50%, maybe then I can actually continue healing beyond that, but I know for a fact I can heal to at least a degree. They also tend to believe that there is a higher order, a higher order that controls all of our systems. So, we obviously cannot think and constantly think about all the things that have to go on in our body to stay alive. If we did, we'd be dead in seconds, right? You've got new blood cell production, the blood cell that are the blood cells that are old and relieving of those, the dozens of functions our liver performs, our heart, our breath, all our synapses, everything being released. I mean, if we had to think about every single thing that is happening within our body to stay alive, there's no way we could do it. None of us would survive. So, I'm pretty sure everybody to a degree believes that there is some higher order that has created this wonderful system that can run on programs, that we don't need to consciously be aware of. The second one is I'm pretty sure every single person believes in the power of thought and the power of our minds. To break it down really, really simply is the power of mind over matter, right? So hold on, I'm just checking to make sure that my privacy settings aren't all screwed up like last time. Okay, hopefully you guys can all see me. It says it's streaming to the group, so I just want to check since I screwed that up last week. Okay, well, I'll just keep going. Hopefully it's not on private like last time, and we can keep going. So basically, mind over matter. It's such a simple, dumbed down way of, describing it, but yet in its simplicity, it is powerful. And thinking back to an example when, mind over matter was 100% how I succeeded was a lot of times in rock climbing. When I went rock climbing, and especially outdoors, in the gyms, they've set it up so, you got a certain skill level, you should be able to succeed, right? There's a next hold. But outdoors, it's natural, it's unknown. And, I'd get to this place where I just didn't see any possible moves. I'm already hundreds of feet and meters up this rock face, and no one is, there's nothing I can do. I can't go down. My partner is belaying me from the top. I can't just go down. There's, different stops we had to make to get to that point, pitches. And the only thing to do is to keep going. But what happens when you see no possible solutions? You see no possible holds, no possible answers. You're trying all these different things that just aren't working. Well, it's a full mind over matter thing, and faith that you just try to take that next step, and that next step will get you there. So what I did was I just had faith and trusted myself and my equipment and attempted a hold, and it turns out it would work. And maybe I need to do that a couple of times, but then all of a sudden another path would be shown. And then I could continue, doing a path that I could see. But this might happen a few times in even one climb. So it really is a mind over matter. I saw no possible options. My surroundings, my environment said, there's nothing you can do. You're kind of SOL. And yet I believed that if I just tried, I don't even know if I saw anything. I just believed that I could do it. And sure enough, mind over matter got me there. So that was just an example of something I did. But what is actually going on in your body when you have these thoughts? So your thoughts and your mind is actually so very powerful. And every thought creates a biochemical reaction. So you have a thought, your brain reacts and sends out hormones and chemicals and, responds, and then your body delivers it. And your body delivers it so that we actually feel that. And so we get to feel our thought. And so then you feel, and then your brain reacts to that feeling, and it just creates a cycle. So when you have positive, elevated emotions, such as joy, gratitude, inspiration, worthiness, whatever, it releases dopamine. And then the body transmits that dopamine, and then we feel it. And then our body responds like, oh, we feel this. Oh my gosh, we feel hope. We feel joy. We feel gratitude. And then it sends that signal back to the brain, and the brain is like, oh, more dopamine. And it's a cycle. Well, imagine the same thing, but, when we have these lower elevated emotions, when we have this fear, when we have anger, worry, hate, unworthiness, pity, it releases neuropeptides. And the body transmits that. And then you feel those feelings. You feel anxious. You feel fearful. You feel worried. You feel loathful. And then because you feel it, that sends signals to your brain to create more. And it's a circle. So thinking creates a feeling, and the feeling creates thinking. And it's a biofeedback loop that can actually physically change our bodies. That's why you see people who have, gotten ill out of high times of stress, whether it's stress at work, stress at the home, stress of grief, stress of loss, or stress of, a really unhealthy lifestyle. That's stressful too. All that stress creates hormones, most specifically cortisol. And that cortisol and those hormones create the biofeedback loop that creates illnesses and illness within the body and these, breaking down of systems. So how do we get out of that? If you've had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 decades of these biofeedback loops, and your brain is set in these old subconscious programs that, you feel fear, you feel worry, you feel anxious, and then your body feels it and you're in this loop. How do you get out of it? We're huge subconscious programs, whether it's ones we're conscious of or barely conscious of or not aware of at all. The thing is to start to observe your automatic thought processes. So start to observe what happens, what your triggers are, how you react to it, how far in this loop you get. So by bringing your unconscious to your conscious, we can then stop these biofeedback loops. The number 3 that I've kind of thought about is people believe that they can indeed create and recreate their future. They've all explored better ways of being. So the gentleman I mentioned that cured his MS, he changed his, from being in a, high pollutant city and high stress lifestyle, living the city lifestyle, very active in business world, very stressful, high stress, eating bad food, breathing bad air, being probably around negative people, and all of these environmental things, and changed, went to a calm, quiet town where the air is great, the pace of life is much slower, much less stressful, changed his diet drastically, and started connecting further to his God and his higher self. But he believed that if he created his new environment and his new reality, that he could create a new healthy future. And he did. So you can replace with who you were with who you're going to be. Absolutely. Another thing that plays in here is visualization. So if you have been an athlete, maybe you've practiced visualization. Let's say you're a track athlete and, you visualize, crossing that goal or, the finish line that, first, but you don't just visualize the end result. You visualize exactly every step you need to do to get there. You might visualize putting on your shoes, putting on your workout clothes, standing up, walking towards the track, and visualizing that gun go off, the horn start. You visualize your running, you visualize your breathing, you visualize the excitement, you visualize the feelings, and all of this. You visualize each step leading up to it. I want to give an example for the musicians out there, because not all of us we're athletes. So they did an experiment, I think, with 3 groups. And group 1 was taught how to play the piano, and they did daily exercises where they practiced piano physically. The second group was allowed to observe how they were taught, but could not practice physically, only practice visually in their mind. And then the third group did nothing at all. So at the end of the study, they did brain scans and everything. Group 1 and 2 had the same changes in the brain that, whether you're physically practicing or mentally practicing. They had the same changes in the brain and were able to play at about the same level. Group 3, no changes were made, and they couldn't play piano. I know, that's shocked everyone, right? And what it is called is, I might butcher this, Hebbian learning maybe. It's basically nerve cells that fire together, wire together. And because they're able to map out the processes in, group 1 and 2, they saw that actual neural networks were being formed during these visualizations. So take that with your healing, with your change, your new identity. Visualize who your new identity is, and then all the steps you need to take to get there. That's why people who work with me, I say, you don't have to have all this energy. You don't have to move. You can do this all in bed because your brain is so powerful. Your brain and your mind are absolutely the most powerful computers in, I don't know, so far the universe, in my opinion. We'll see how that plays out in the long run. Another important thing about this is you can create new neural networks, but you can also delete the old ones. If you don't use it, you lose it, which is absolutely incredible for this type of healing. So the more you practice, first step, becoming conscious of your subconscious, becoming aware of your automatic programs. That's step number 1. Then tweaking that and changing it to, if you're in a negative loop, changing your thoughts and your actions and your feelings to a positive one. And the more you work on doing that, the more those networks get created, and your brain goes in and trims the ones you don't need anymore. And those are your subconscious negative programs. So when you take dominion over your thoughts and you no longer let yourself run on automatic default, you prune the old programs you don't need, which then enhances the healing progress. The last big one is everyone I spoke to took control. They didn't wish it away, they didn't hope it away, they didn't pray it away. They all took control. So knowing it was possible, knowing that they could have autonomy over their body, through their mind, through their spiritual practices, and spiritual bodies, they had to have 100% decision, will, passion, and focus. You can't just, you also just can't sit 5 minutes in the morning and visualize your perfect, happy, healthy self and just run on the other 23 hours and 55 minutes of default programs. It really takes a constant awareness, a constant change, constant adapting, and just focus and determination, decision, will. And it is a lot of work. No one just laid there and said, I'll just be healed. They did work. They took action and they sought help when needed. Not one of these people that I've spoken with or worked with, obviously, or heard about, did this on their own. They all sought help to do this. So the more you practice paying attention to your thoughts, the easier it becomes to pay attention and change them, which then makes it easier to change and recreate your future as often as you need to. And we're programmed to this is another really fun part, is we're programmed to believe that our 3D physical world is what's really going on. One, we are aware of our body, and our body receives feedback and sends it to our brain, and there's an exchange of what way all our senses input. We've got this physical body that's inputting senses, and a lot of times we think that that's what life is. That's all that there is this physical exchange of information. Two, we're aware of our environment. Our environment produces what our physical bodies feel. So is it cold? Is it hot? Is it raining? Is it snowing? Is it windy? Is there sunshine? Is it dark? Is it light? Is it hot? Is it cold? Just like the extensive goes on. Is our environment safe? Do we have a home? Are we on the streets? Are we doing something safe? We presume is safe, like sitting on our couch versus running across a 6-lane highway. Are we in a safe environment? Then another one that is very specific to our physical body is, in our 3D physical world, is time. Our sense of time. We structure our whole life around this concept of time. Like here, I do these, every Tuesday at 10. That's time. So what's interesting is when we start to focus inward, we focus solely on our thoughts and are solely on our conscious, those 3D things start to disappear. So I don't know if it's never happened with me in a mindfulness meditation, because you're supposed to be fully in the 3D physical present, paying attention to all your senses and being aware, and you might lose, some conception of time and sense of time, maybe awareness of your environment, but you should be very aware of your body. So these happen more for me, at least, in loving compassion meditation or loving kindness meditations, my walking meditations, my transcendental meditations, and some other meditations where I lose concept of my body, my environment, my time. I go to a place where there is no body, no place, nothing, no time, nowhere. I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it, which is why I'm a huge fan of him. It's very reminiscent of my NDE, where I was pure consciousness. And with a lot of studying and research, I'm now able to get to pure consciousness again without, having a drastic sever from my body. I can just leave it peacefully and come back peacefully. I don't need that harsh NDE experience to do this anymore. And what is really amazing is, when you're void of all these things, possibilities just, arise. There's solutions to the problem you didn't realize existed. You get out of your body, and when your thoughts aren't controlling your feelings and you're in this loop and you're detached from it, your body usually tends to go into coherence. And then the cells all act and they vibrate at a much different level, and they start to have healing effects. So it's absolutely incredible. Also, in my near-death experience, when I was pure consciousness, there was no time so my thoughts instantly created. They instantly manifested. Where here, when we come back from, being detached in the sense of meditation, back to our body, we are once again back into 3D, back in time, back in matter. So it does take some time for it to happen. So I'm going to go back, because what does this all have to do with spontaneous healing versus long-term healing? This all sounds like long-term healing. Well, even my spontaneous healing wasn't spontaneous at all. There were things in play, things that I wanted to change, traumas I had cut, old thought programs and patterns that I had cut ties with, old feelings, old reactions. So I had done a ton of this work leading up to this retreat. I wasn't even going necessarily for healing. It just was a side effect of, cutting all of the ties with my past self and the things that I know I never wanted to identify with or no longer wanted to identify with. and starting to create a new, healthy, happy future. And it just happened to be that, my brain rewired and rewrote this program in a meditative state. And it felt spontaneous, because I had 20 some years of this condition, and then all of a sudden I have no symptoms. It feels spontaneous. But when you look back, it wasn't. I made a decision to change. I believed in the possibility that I could heal to an extent. I believed in the power of thought. I believed I could create and recreate my future as much as that necessarily. And I took control. I took control and started studying and started understanding and started, practicing meditation. So it wasn't spontaneous at all. And looking at these other spontaneous healings, aside from NDEs, NDEs just happen to have kind of this drastic change in identity, drastic change in beliefs, drastic change in power, the belief of power of thought and mind. And so it all kind of happens at once for people with near-death experiences. So it usually has this huge spiritual awakening aspect, this huge shift of consciousness aspect, this huge sense of identity shift. I mean, all these things shift at once in an NDE where, and that's why it's so drastic and so overwhelming and often really hard for people to recover from. So NDEs are not a simple way. People tell me, oh, I wish I had an NDE, so I had this and this. You can have all this and this and this the easy way, the soft way. It does take more time, but it's so much more gentle. So nothing is actually spontaneous. Everything, looking back, I could see exactly the years it took me to do this. Now, I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't understand what it was leading up to. But people who are actively trying to heal and try to change their, future can do this much more quickly if you're aware of it. So our minds and our spiritual nature, so our subconscious mind, our innate intelligence, our spiritual nature, whatever one you resonate with the most, are far more great. They're far greater. They're far more powerful than any pill or therapy or treatment that we have currently. So, it is absolutely incredible to witness the power of, our minds and our spirits and our consciousness ourselves from where we stem, our true spiritual authenticity. And when we become that spiritually authentic, the healing happens to be a side effect. So, maybe you're on here just curious, the differences between the different healings, like the description said, which cat's out of the bag, no such thing as spontaneous healing, but there is accelerated healing. And, I can articulate how to do that. And I've worked with many, many people who have had amazing successes. And I try to provide your best opportunity for a spontaneous healing. So what I would consider that is you've got a bunch of symptoms and then none. But even as I get you ready for a possible spontaneous healing, best setup possible, did what I've done, help you do what thousands of other people have done. There's healing along the way, and that's really cool to see. But what if you don't have a serious health issue? Well, do you really want to wait for a health crisis to figure this out? Also, don't we all suffer from some kind of affliction? Whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual? Do these afflictions not deserve the same amount of attention? Do you not deserve the same amount of attention? Imagine learning the tools to, heal and change and create with something that you might think is a small infliction. Maybe it's a large infliction, but you're not going to worry about it now. But having the tools now, that means you can deal with anything in the future that comes up. So it's all about, do you deserve the attention? Well, if you do, comment, I do, and I'll reach out to you and, see if we're a good fit and if I can help you create your own perfect ish, your happy, healthy future.